These are the tales from South Florida for you, with your host Bill Monty.
Okay, everybody, get ready because here's Skipper.
Welcome to our show, and speaking of shows,
Welcome, my friends, once again to Tales from South Florida. And as the song just said, I'm your host, Bill Monty. Well, that was the first song that you heard. The second song did not introduce me at all, but it did introduce a real South Florida superstar. Or should I say, another South Florida superstar. But this one wasn't a superstar back when the first one was around. That was a man named Chuck Zink. And if you grew up in South Florida in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, he was Skipper Chuck to you. Host of Skipper Chuck's Popeye Playhouse and later on, The Skipper Chuck Show. His real name was Charles Dwayne Zink. He was born February 4th, 1925 and passed away January 5th, 2006. He was an American television personality and film actor, but he was best known for the character of Skipper Chuck, who hosted a popular South Florida children's television series right here in South Florida. You know, back in those days, I remember you had television for kids in the morning was Captain Kangaroo, Monday through Friday. So Captain Kangaroo, he was the captain. He wasn't a skipper, he was the captain. Maybe a little bit higher rank, huh? So he was, a jovial older guy with a bizarre array of characters around him. The strange one to me was Grandfather Clock, a creepy looking thing. But the most important thing about Captain Kangaroo was that he came on at 8 a.m. When I was in school, I was either on my way to school at that time or I was at school. The only time I saw Captain Kangaroo really was during the summer months. And he was national. He was a network show, CBS network show. But locally, down here, we had Skipper Chuck. And there were some others too. I remember coming home from school in the afternoon, a character named Banjo Billy did sort of the same thing. Banjo Billy showed cartoons and had some unique little characters around him and everything. What was great about him was he had his bowler hat, his striped vest, and he played the banjo, believe it or not, with a name like that. I like Banjo Billy. I remember there was also Captain Jack. I don't remember exactly what the show was. Maybe he was on Banjo Billy's show. And Charlie Baxter, who was also a weatherman on Channel 7, if I'm not mistaken. He did lots of other types of shows. He did like this nighttime spooky movie character called M.T. Graves. Get it? M.T. Graves. And he also did Sunday Mornings with Charlie Baxter, where he would read the Sunday Funnies with the robot who looked suspiciously like the robot from Lost in Space. But no one was like Skipper Chuck. Skipper Chuck was just the bomb. First off, if you were a kid in South Florida at the time, the one thing you wanted was to be on the Skipper Chuck show. Why? Well, you watched it on TV. The kids were sitting on the bleachers. They had this great show happening right in front of them. They were showing cartoons. They had contests. They had something called a balloon drop, where all these balloons would come down, and the kids would just rush onto the floor. They're knocking each other over. I don't know how someone didn't get seriously hurt. But they were trying to find that one balloon that had the certificate inside of it that meant you won all the prizes that were being shown. I remember that was one of the first places I saw like the candy Sugar Daddy? It was like a piece of chocolate on a stick, like chocolate taffy. You couldn't chew this thing. But there was one that was like 2 feet long. I used to just dream about being able to win that Sugar Daddy on Skipper Chuck. I think my brother got to go on Skipper Chuck, maybe with his Boy Scout troop or something. I don't remember. I never made it to Skipper Chuck, though. But a lot of kids did. Literally probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of kids from the time the show aired from 1957 to 1979 got a chance to go to the show, have fun, sing songs, see magic, see Skipper Chuck's sidekick Scrubby, who was this tall, lanky character, actually real name Richard Andrews. But Scrubby was the funny, goofy guy, kind of a Gilligan type of character, like from Gilligan's Island. I don't believe the character ever had an intelligent thing to say. He was just full of bad puns and lousy jokes. He was a means to an end. And Skipper Chuck himself never really came off as the highly intelligent or better than the kids. I think one of the things the kids liked about Skipper Chuck was that he didn't talk down to them. He actually asked them to come up to his level of what he was talking about. And in return, he would do all the silly, funny, goofy things that you enjoyed seeing. But he also got serious sometimes. He was very serious about racial relations. In the 50s and 60s, one thing you did not see was a black child sitting next to a white child. Not in school, not in a movie theater, nowhere. Skipper Chuck said he would have none of that. And his show was one of the first to integrate in South Florida, where if you were watching on TV, you saw a white child and a black child sitting next to each other. He started doing the word of the day to help educate kids. And that word of the day also helped educate migrant children from Cuba who had come over after Fidel Castro took power in Cuba, that were trying to learn the language. And so many of them learned the language from watching television. So Skipper Chuck made sure that every day there was a new word to learn, and he explained what it meant, and he explained how to pronounce it. He was a father figure to a lot of kids. He wasn't judgmental, and he taught us that we should always try to do the right thing, that we should always be kind. He sang a song about peace, love, and happiness. And isn't that nice? We could use a little bit of that today. Kind of makes me miss Skipper Chuck a little bit more. At the time, there was also the Muscular Dystrophy Telethon, the Labor Day Telethon, that was hosted by actor and comedian Jerry Lewis. Now, if you're younger, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But this used to be a really big thing over the Labor Day weekend, especially down here in South Florida, where either there was a hurricane coming or it was raining. Always rained on Labor Day. So you were going to watch the Labor Day Telethon. But that was a national thing. You know, it originated in New York, I believe. I think it then went to New Jersey, and the last years it was on, it was out of Las Vegas. So there would be all of these stars that would help Jerry Lewis raise millions and millions of dollars to fight muscular dystrophy. But there also needed to be a local movement. And Skipper Chuck, who was friends with Jerry Lewis, thought, why not get the kids involved? So he used his Skipper Chuck Playhouse show as a platform to get kids involved in charity. They would have carnivals for dystrophy, and he would give them ideas to what they could do, how they could raise money, games they could set up in their backyards. Burger King was an advertiser on the Skipper Chuck show. And if you sent away for the backyard carnival kit from the show, it included a coupon that you would take to your local Burger King, and they would give you the syrup for the orange soda that they sold, and they would give you paper cups so that you could sell orange soda, and all that money that you raised, whatever it might be, would go to fight muscular dystrophy. Skipper Chuck and the news crews from WTVJ would go out to these backyard carnivals, and they would interview kids, and sometimes the money that they raised was $5 or $8, which back then was still a pretty good sum. But Skipper Chuck would make such a big deal, you would have thought you raised $1 million. And in doing that, what he taught kids was it's important to give back to your community. It's important to help others. It's important to be a good person. And that's important for you to know as a child that you are important. That was a great lesson for all of us. And Skipper Chuck gave it to us all the time. His show went off the air in 1979. Skipper Chuck, who also had been a radio personality, drifted over to radio. He had a talk show on WKAT AM radio for a while. And when that ended, he started playing, he had a nighttime show. and did big band type of music. He was always still involved within the community, and he became the spokesperson for Century Village. We all kind of made a joke of it at the time, but looking back on it, he took the concept of senior living and made it acceptable. These senior residences for the people who lived up north and came down here, or for our grandmothers, our grandfathers who were retiring to South Florida to have a great place to live. And he became the face of Century Village for the longest time. He might be gone, but Century Village is still around. So many of us grew up with Skipper Chuck. Ed Odell, who was an anchor for a long time in South Florida, a news anchor, actually got his start as a cameraman and then started appearing on the show as a character on the Skipper Chuck Show. Tennis great Chris Everett once told him, "I grew up on your show. It meant so much to me." In his later years, in his 70s, he was interviewed once, and he said he was amazed at how many people would just come up to him on the street and thank him for the great times and the care that he showed through his television show. Isn't that a wonderful legacy to leave? Chuck Zink passed away in January of 2006 after suffering a stroke. He had been in hospice care, and fittingly, the name of the facility that he went to and that he passed away in was Hospice by the Sea. But where else would the skipper go for his final bow? I want to remind you to please share your stories of the Skipper Chuck Show. If you were ever on the show, that would be great to hear. It's easy to do, my friends, and it doesn't cost anything. Just scroll down in your show notes or visit Talesfromsouthflorida.com and go to the SpeakPipe link. That way you can leave a free 90-second message for me that I can play in a future episode, and I can hear your memories of the wonderful Skipper Chuck or Chuck Zink. Maybe you had a chance to be on the show, or maybe you just had a chance to meet him. As always, I want to remind you, especially these days and these times, my friends, please be safe and please be kind. Or as Skipper Chuck would say, peace, love, and happiness. I wish I could play that, but I can't because of copyright laws. So instead, I'm going to play my theme song. Everyone get your toes a-tapping, because here we go.
Let's take a talk down memory lane, 'cause the stories around here are just insane. Pirates World, the Sporto and Wolfies do, Palm Beach to Key West, that's where we grew. These are the tales from South Florida for you, with your host Bill Monty.